everyone should care about whether their son, their cousin, their neighbor is being arrested based on shoddy evidence.
Welcome to Criminal Injustice, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on America's broken legal system. I'm your host, Casey Krizman, a criminal defense attorney and former criminal defendant. I fight in the trenches to defend those caught in the machinery of our so-called justice system. Each month, we bring you raw conversations with activists, advocates, and experts who are working to expose systemic oppression and create real change for the system and for the people caught up in it. But we don't just highlight problems, we focus on solutions. You'll hear inspiring stories of resistance and resilience and learn concrete ways that you can take action to help fix this broken system or to cope with it if you're caught in it. The fight against criminal injustice starts now. Welcome back to Criminal Injustice. I am excited and honored to have Mary Claire Mulligan with us today. Mary Claire Mulligan has been a fierce and relentless advocate for the criminally accused for over 30 years. She is one of the preeminent voices speaking out on criminal justice reform and also received the most prestigious Jonathan Olem Award in 2024, which is handed out to the criminal defense attorney who is most dedicated to the practice of criminal defense, protecting her clients and without regard to finances. So it really is an incredible achievement for Mary Claire, and just an honor to have you with us today.
Thank you.
So thank you for being here.
Thanks for asking me. I appreciate it so much.
Now, obviously right now we're working with the Missy Woods scandal and the CBI scientific scandal. We have, in the criminal injustice system, the cards are stacked so far against our clients to begin with, and now trust in the institutions behind our science is at play here. What does this mean for the community at large?
Well, I think everyone in the community is vested in having an accurate criminal justice system. Mm-hmm. Everyone should care about whether their son, their cousin, their neighbor is being arrested based on shoddy evidence. And what we've now heard, which is so, magnifies this issue so much more, is that there are so many rape kits that have not been tested by CBI. There's a backlog of over 500 rape kits, that it's really an actual safety issue.
So what is
That's 500 people out there potentially who have allegedly committed a sexual assault, and their DNA evidence has not been tested. So there's no way of knowing whether those people may or may not have, whether they're out in our community potentially causing damage to other people.
And so is this backlog a result of the Missy Woods investigation? Is it a systemic issue that CBI's had for a while?
I don't know. CBI says that it is part of, a number of things, including them getting ready to upscale the number of analysts they had, as well as what they had to do to recover from, as it's, the Missy Woods issue. And I want to just emphasize that this is not a Missy Woods issue.
Yes.
This is an absolute failing top to bottom by CBI. They knew that Missy Woods had been, cooking the books, so to speak, back in 2014 at a minimum. Mm-hmm. And they allowed her to continue working for almost 10 years before someone found out about it in a way that they couldn't hide it anymore.
Indeed. And so CBI came out in November of 23 and announced their investigation. And for those of us who may not know so much about the Missy Woods, if you could just give us a platform for jumping off, what essentially in the last 15 months has the Missy Woods issue, what is that all about?
Well, first let me explain what CBI is, because in case anyone isn't familiar with it, it's the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. Everyone's heard of the FBI.
Yeah.
CBI has fewer investigating agents, like you imagine. When you think of the FBI, it's more of a forensic lab for the law enforcement agencies in our state to send evidence to, and then it will be tested, and the agent who tested it will do a report. And that doesn't have to be just DNA. It could be ballistics. It could be fingerprints. It could be any scientific discipline that they have set up.
So we, as a community, as a society, we rely on these government agencies to add credibility to the structures that we put in place for society to exist, right, and living within the law, et cetera. How did that all change in November of 2023?
Well, what happened was Missy Woods was a long-time agent. I've been a lawyer for 33 years, and I remember the first time I cross-examined her in a trial back in the 90s.
Okay.
So I've known her for 30 years.
Okay.
And she kind of grew up with the CBI system. As DNA evolved, of course CBI wanted to get in on that.
Right.
She was one of the early people to train in Colorado to do DNA testing. And over time, as that progressed and the systems that CBI used to test DNA became more sophisticated, so did she. So Missy really has been with the agency for a very long time and was basically ingrained in their culture. So as CBI evolved, and in the early 2000s, CBI got a grant from the federal government to clear cold cases. As the scientific methods became more exact, they used people like Missy Woods to work overtime with the grant money. The grant money paid for their overtime.
Right.
And they used that to run a lot of cold case evidence. And Missy was very heavily involved in working overtime. She was a single mom, and so she did a lot of that overtime. And I tried several of those cold cases back in like 2006 to 2009, and she was on all of them.
So it sounds like she's getting overwhelmed. And in 2014, what happened?
Well, in 2014, it was discovered that she had done some things that weren't really kosher when it comes to how evidence was tested and documented.
Okay.
And one of the other analysts kind of called her out about not properly documenting and running samples, and that was just shoved under the rug. And the person who called her out stopped at that point doing DNA analysis and was demoted.
Wow.
Then in 2018, Missy was anxiously working on a case that involved a person named Alex Ewing,
Okay.
and was in a hurry to provide results for the police agencies involved in that case.
Okay.
Alex Ewing was a person who was charged with murder in a cold case in both Arapahoe and Jefferson County. And Missy wanted the results from the technical review of her analysis as quickly as possible.
Okay.
The technical reviewer was supposed to make sure that the analyst who did the testing followed all the rules and did everything according to procedure.
Okay.
That just seems basic to me. Like I said, I'm no scientist. I'm just a lawyer. But
Well, it's a basic checklist to know that the person providing these results did their job correctly.
Right. And so when one of the analysts was asked to do the technical review on this Alex Ewing case,
Okay.
in 2018, she found that Missy had deleted data.
Deleted data?
Yeah, and she told Missy about it, and she went to the boss at the time. That person no longer works at CBI.
Okay.
And the boss said, okay, we're going to handle this by pulling Missy off DNA analysis
Okay.
for about 6 months. And we think this is a mental health issue that needs to be handled by, it's the kind of the typical, oh, we're giving you too much work, hun, go get a massage.
Right.
That kind of response, and no real effort to look into the issue and see if it had been done in other cases,
Right.
why this was actually happening, whether it could be prevented, etc. So Missy was pulled off doing analysis, and CBI didn't tell anybody.
Okay. And so you have said that Missy Woods is actually just the symptom of a bigger problem.
Yes,
So,
I do.
And so
I
tell
feel
us what
very
that
strongly
means.
about
Yeah.
that. This couldn't have happened without the deliberate blinders of the people in charge of her. And CBI is accredited, like many forensic labs across the country. When CBI, meaning the heads of CBI, the lab directors, etc., found out what Missy was doing and realized that she had apparently done this initially, in hundreds of cases. Now we know it's probably thousands. They didn't contact the DA's offices. They didn't contact the public defender. They didn't contact any of the law enforcement agencies that they had done the work for. Who did they contact? The people in charge of their accreditation.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were desperate not to lose that. That's the one thing they wanted to hold on to, ignoring the fact that so many hundreds of people may have been affected by what she had done. And what did she do? Here's an example. So in our case, there was, and my client has given me permission to speak about this, there was a situation in which a woman had died. They had gotten a sample of her blood to be tested for what they call a reference sample.
Okay.
So that is, in crime scenes, it works for fingerprints, DNA, whatever. If someone is, for example, killed in their own home, or their office or their car, or one of those areas is a crime scene, you want to eliminate, obviously, their DNA, their hairs, their fingerprints are going to be all over their own house, their own car, whatever. So you want to know who might be there legitimately, so you can exclude those people and look for what doesn't fit. Kind of the Sesame Street, which one doesn't match thing, which one is not like the others. So in this case, they were just doing the basic sample, the reference sample, so that they would know what this woman's DNA profile looked like.
Okay.
So Missy got that and did the initial run through, typing it for X and Y markers.
Okay.
And she found male DNA in the sample. Obviously, male DNA shouldn't be in the reference sample
Right.
of a woman. And so what you're supposed to do is figure out how that got there. Was there contamination in the
Right.
sample somewhere? Was the machine that you ran the DNA analysis on somehow miscalibrated?
Because those are highly sensitive machines.
Very, very sensitive. But so what she did here was the machine spits out data. The machine spits out the data in sort of a CSV format.
Okay.
And the analysts take that data and immediately convert it to an Excel spreadsheet that they can work with. That,
Okay.
you know, everybody does that.
Sure.
The data cell for male DNA should have been 0 because it's a female reference sample.
Indeed.
It was the cell on the spreadsheet was blank, not 0, not positive, not any other number.
Just no data.
No data whatsoever, which it shouldn't have been.
Right.
That was happening in a lot of sex assault cases, et cetera, and that's how an intern at CBI first discovered the problem in September 2023. They were doing a research project on the value of certain types of DNA swabbing that's done during a sane examination.
Okay. Sex assault nurse examination.
Exactly. And so this research project, the intern, this isn't even a full-fledged technician or analyst. This is a college kid.
Well, it's almost like it needed to be. It needed to be someone who wasn't part of the system.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Great point. So she went to her supervisor there and was like, this is weird. I'm seeing all these empty cells
Right.
where there should be data. Well, can we go back to the machine and the CSV version? No, because CBI routinely deleted all the data from their
Pre-conversion into Excel.
exactly.
Wow.
They deleted it every 6 months on the theory that kind of like, you know, when your laptop's a little clunky and you're like, I'm going to clear my cache.
Right.
So that's basically what their excuse was for deleting all of the basic pure data.
So I want to zoom out here a little bit and just, you know, unfortunately, a lot of the narrative in criminal justice reform is that these folks are committing crimes anyway. What does it matter? And you touched on earlier that this is a community safety issue as well on the other side of that token, in terms of, you know, people running free. But why should we care about folks who may have committed the crime being convicted with faulty science?
Well, I think that goes down to fundamentally, what do we believe as human beings? What do we think a justice system should be?
Right.
What do we think we should provide for our brothers and sisters and friends and neighbors and sometimes ourselves who are accused of a crime? Because everybody knows somebody who was accused of something they haven't done. Every one of us has been accused of something we haven't done, not necessarily in the criminal arena,
Sure.
but none of us like it.
Right.
How do we want to be treated? That's how we should be treating the people that we are throwing away in our prison system and that CBI doesn't care about. It's us as citizens who are bearing the brunt of this. In January of last year, CBI went to the Joint Budget Committee and said, we need $7.5 million to deal with this whole problem. And here's how we're going to spend it. We're going to give $4 million to the DAs who might need it for
Retrial.
defending against all these big bad defense lawyers who are, you know, trying to dredge up old convictions. And the rest of it we're going to use to hire outside labs to do retesting on all this stuff.
Okay.
Well, they only sent 14 samples out to be retested
14.
in the year plus.
How many cases do we know at this point in time that Missy Woods altered or doctored?
We don't. There's no real definitive number.
Okay.
It's over 800.
Okay. And
over 1,000 probably.
And they've retested 14 of anything.
And let's recall, this is not a Missy Woods problem, this is a CBI problem,
Right.
and one of the reasons it's a CBI problem and not just her is that she wasn't the only one. There was a CBI trained contract lab in Greeley. One of their people, Kiara Wunsch, was fired after they started testing, looking back at all of the samples, a sample of samples analyzed by all the other DNA techs. And so she lost her job because of similar behavior. When Missy was interviewed by CBI about what she did, she said other people do it. And she mentioned the name of a specific person. Coincidentally, I had a lawyer call me yesterday and say, I don't know if my case could potentially be affected by this because it was name of this other person who was the analyst. And I'm like, well, you should read what Missy said about her.
Yeah.
And in the course of this investigation, they also interviewed Jan Gerton, who used to be the lab director there at CBI. Jan told the other CBI agent who was interviewing her about this situation that when she started at CBI, which I believe was 2004, there were agents at CBI dry labbing.
Okay, what's dry labbing?
Dry labbing, it sounds gross, but it is gross. Not physically gross, but what it is...
Morally corrupt.
It is people providing results for a test they didn't run. So in other words, oh yeah, it's his DNA. I could say that.
Yeah.
Throw some money at me and I'll be happy to, be like, oh no, I didn't do the test, but
right.
I think it's him.
So, what we have is a cancer at the systemic level of, again, just the backbone of trying to trust our institutions that have set up the criminal and justice system. So when we are looking at $7.5 million this time around that the taxpayers are paying, if you had your druthers, what would Colorado, the state of Colorado, what would they be doing to fix this problem?
First of all, I would shut it down. I would shut down CBI. It's going to be expensive. It's going to be expensive no matter what.
Okay.
Secondly, I would actually see about appointing someone like a special master to oversee all of these cases and figure out where all these people are. I just got a notice today from a case from 2006 saying, oh, here you go, Mary Claire. And all it said was, this person, we have information that this person's case was affected by this situation, period.
So what do you do with that? You were defense counsel at the time.
Well, and I didn't recognize the person's name, so I went back and looked, and I had been appointed on this guy's case. I didn't try his case. He had a different trial lawyer.
Okay.
I had been appointed, it was a habitual criminal case, and I'd been appointed to attack the priors.
Okay.
So I don't know if they reached out to his actual trial lawyer.
Right.
But this was a person who's doing 72 years right now. And so...
And his DNA could have been dry labbed.
Who knows what could have happened? Because I don't even, since I wasn't the trial lawyer on the case, it was hard enough for me to remember what happened in my own cases.
Right.
So then there's just this huge void. What do we do? Which is why I think a special master or something like that would be good. This is going to cost a massive amount of money because everything needs to be reviewed very thoroughly by someone competent to review it.
Well, and it seems like it's more of, the focus is an us versus them mentality. Our convictions are now at risk, the government is saying. And so rather than focusing on let's get it right, they're trying to hold on to what they already have.
Not only that, but really CBI has done an excellent job of sweeping this under the rug and trying to make this the Missy problem
Right.
and not their problem. And not only that, but it was when I was litigating this in court, you know, the DAs on my case knew that there had been a problem. We knew that there had been a problem. We didn't know what the problem was for months. And so I was contacting CBI eventually through their lawyers at the Attorney General's office, because the Attorney General's office stepped in.
Wow.
Because so the Attorney General represents CBI as a client. That's part of the Attorney General's job, to represent state agencies. It also is connected to CBI through the Department of Law and the Division of Criminal Justice. The Attorney General's office has lawyers whose job is basically to litigate criminal cases on appeal.
Mm-hmm.
So they are acting as law enforcement.
Right.
And because of that, they have a duty to notify the defense if there is any exculpatory information that they know about. This is called Brady versus Maryland.
Right.
And so instead of the Attorney General's office saying, okay, you know, we have a duty to the people that we're prosecuting to make sure that they have the information that we have
Right.
that could undermine their conviction, instead of disclosing what was going on, they fought us at every turn. Finally, I know this happened in Weld County too, our DAs had to issue a subpoena to CBI to force them to bring, to give us the information and tell us what was going on, because we didn't know anything other than, I didn't know all the stuff I just told you.
Right.
I didn't know that till we got everything.
Wow.
And it became public knowledge. So when they subpoenaed that stuff that we wanted, basically we wanted to know, okay, what is this anomaly you're talking about? What did she do in our case that was wrong?
Right.
How did it affect our case? You know, has she done this other times? When did this happen? What's going on? We didn't know any of that. And so the DAs subpoenaed CBI for the answers to those questions, and the Attorney General's office fought the subpoena.
So let me ask you this. We're not going to get what we want, right? We're not going to get
I like
the
to get what
CBI
I
to
want.
shut down. Well,
I
sure.
really feel like I should get what I want.
Okay.
And
How
what
are
I
we going
want
to do
is
that?
complete transparency.
Okay.
And I want them to open their doors up. Let us look at every single bit of data they have. How is that hurting them?
Right. So how do we do that? What on a community level, on an attorney level, on a voter level? What can we do to force this issue instead of just letting these behemoth bureaucracies do what they want?
Well, I don't know. On a voter level, I don't really know what voting for particular AG candidates or whatever, I don't know how that will help, unless, of course, somebody says, I'm going to clean things up and be transparent. And I'm sure they'll live up to their campaign promises. But we should be encouraging, let me tell you who's there's some people doing a great job on the Joint Budget Committee of questioning CBI and whether they should be handing out this money like candy to them.
Right.
By the way, has the defense gotten any money for all of what we've been doing, beating our heads against the wall, trying to get this information so that we can let our clients know how they've been affected? No, that hasn't happened yet.
Right.
I hope that it will. But encourage your state legislatures, those on the Joint Budget Committee and elsewhere, your local legislator, legislator, both in the House and the Senate, they have the power to hold CBI under the microscope, and no one has done that yet. That's what I'd like to see our elected officials do.
Okay.
And I think that that's what we can do as voters. Now, as ordinary people, outside of the voting realm,
Right.
educate yourself. Educate your friends. As
Right.
lawyers, it's even more important. I mean, I know I've been complaining about this ever since it happened, as
Right.
loudly as I can, but I'm not loud enough. So I appreciate you holding the loudspeaker up for me and letting me say, we need help here.
Yes.
We need to let all of our clients know if they've been affected by this. We need to take action if they have. We need to get their cases back into the court. We need open discovery, open files from CBI about what happened, who it happened to, and when it happened. And we need to be able to have an expert look at these things and say, wow, there's a significant problem here. And this person might have been unjustly convicted.
Right.
You know, our court system needs to have their eyes opened about the fact that people in prison don't automatically get post-conviction litigation.
Right.
There seems to be an idea out there that, you know, these guys in prison are just filing motion after motion and doing, you know,
Right. Just clogging
frivolous
up the docket.
litigation. But in order to get a lawyer in post-conviction, the individual themselves has to contact the court first and overcome a legal burden of showing that they have the grounds to attack their prior conviction and that there's some basis that the court has for granting it. And what the court does is look at the court file.
Right.
The judges should be automatically appointing lawyers for every one of these cases.
So they gave $4 million to prosecutors in this last round of budgeting, right, to help deal with the mean old defense attorneys. What could we have done with $4 million in terms of getting that master overseer, or really just getting transparency?
We could at least get a bunch of post-conviction lawyers on the ground working on it.
Yeah.
And that $4 million didn't go directly to the DAs. It went to CBI to reimburse the DAs. And that was, they used a very minimal, less than $100,000 of that.
Wow. So, obviously, unfortunately, a lot of the folks that she's messed with are in prison. For the folks...
Some might be dead.
Indeed. For those, maybe somebody in prison gets to see this or hear this podcast, but for anybody listening who thinks that they might have been a victim of her misconduct, what should they do?
They should immediately, if they have the ability to contact a criminal defense lawyer, that's a great start.
Okay.
But they also should be, if they are in that post-conviction phase, which most of these people are, because I don't think anybody's really going to trial now with any cases where Missy was the analyst, but they should contact their original lawyer. They should contact the court where they were originally convicted.
Right. Okay.
They can send a Form 4, which is the
JDF Form 4?
JDF
Okay.
Form 4.
Self-help on your website.
Which is a form for people who've been convicted to say to the court, I want to file, the motion is called a 35C motion or petition because it's named after the rule that allows us to attack prior convictions after the appeal. So they should fill out that form and send it to the judge.
Okay.
They should contact their original lawyer. They should contact the public defender system. They should contact alternate defense counsel. And you know what? I don't think the public defenders and alternate defense counsel are going to be thrilled that I say you should write to them.
Right.
But the squeaky wheel gets the grease here.
Yeah.
And we need as many places as possible. We need to let people know,
Yeah.
hey, I've got one of these cases. This might be me. I need help.
Right.
Because things are moving very slowly. And a large part of that is because of CBI and the Attorney General's office digging their heels in and not disclosing information to us.
Wow. So, Mary Claire, you have devoted your life to banging your head up against walls and not giving up until you can't bang any longer. I'm sitting here with a podcast fighting the criminal injustice system, but you've been doing it for decades. Mm-hmm. What does it mean to fight the criminal injustice system to you?
I kind of think it's my point in life, really. I mean, I've been loving this job for 33 years. And, I don't know why it's so fun, but it is. I was raised that you should use your skills to help others. Mm-hmm. My grandmother was, by all accounts, a genius and voted most likely to become a scientist in high school.
Okay.
She was so smart that she graduated when she was 16. And she went to work at a shoe factory working piecework because at that time there was no way. She came from a poor family. She was a woman. And I knew that if she had the ability to do what I was able to do, go to college, go to law school, she would have been out there helping other people. And that was just what I thought was the right thing to do. And so eventually when I went to law school, I did actually think that criminal law was the most interesting type of law. And I had a connection at the U.S. Attorney's Office. So I worked for the federal prosecutors as an intern, and I wrote briefs and stuff. And one time I wrote a brief, and the 10th Circuit cited my brief. And I was super excited, and I realized that the 10th Circuit granted me a win and cited my brief against a person who was in federal prison, who no longer had a lawyer, who was borderline intellectually disabled. And I was like, this is not what I should be using my skills for.
Right. Wow.
This is not who I want to be. I want to be on the side of the borderline intellectually disabled, unrepresented guy. I want to be next to him. I want to be the one who's helping him get out, not keeping him in.
Right.
And, I just wish that more people could see the humanity in our clients.
Right. Well, maybe that's the answer to my next question for you, which is how do you maintain the enthusiasm? 33 years of the system trying to beat down your clients.
Little wins really help.
Okay.
But, it just liking the fight, I think, is some of it.
Okay, yes.
But it's really the human connection that keeps me going. I draw a lot of strength and energy from my clients. I've represented thousands of people now over the years, and there are a lot of people who really had no one. So many people in our society are forgotten or left behind or overlooked, kicked, pushed to the side, and have so little resources, and yet they still have humanity and dignity, and they care about other people. And you know, when you've got somebody who's been born to parents who were addicted, someone with intellectual disability, someone who was raised in poverty, and they're reaching out to others, and no matter where they are, whether it's in prison or on the street, at the homeless camp, they're reaching out to other people to try to lift them up in some way. Just basic human goodness and
Right.
generosity, that's what motivates me. That's what keeps me going, because I'm like, this person deserves a fair shot.
Yeah.
This person deserves the same rights that I have as a privileged middle-aged white woman
Yeah.
who was lucky enough to be able to get a good education.
Yeah.
And not just that, but every person should have the same rights that Elon Musk has.
Yeah.
Oh, he's not, is he even a U.S. citizen?
Um,
But honestly, I believe, even if he's not a U.S. citizen, he's a neighbor.
right.
Our neighbors all deserve the same rights that I have, that rich people have, that someone at the highest echelons of economic power has, that someone who is running the country has. Every human being has an innate value. And one of our jobs is to look for that and to point out to the people that are putting them in jail, putting them in prison, prosecuting them. We need to point out that everyone is capable of redemption.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is actually bigger and better than the worst thing they've ever done.
And frankly, I mean, that's so profound, right? Brian Stevenson and the work that he does, and it's a guiding quote in my life. But getting back to the humanity of it, the human kindness, the profiles and resilience, you and I get to see that almost every day, because we have clients who don't know whether they're going to be free in a month, or maybe they're not free now and they don't know if they're ever going to be free again. And they have this, they're in crisis, they have the fear of the unknown, and yet they're still getting up every day and fighting. And that's just incredible.
I've got a client who is serving life right now. He originally was on death row, and he is working at the prison as basically a nurse's aide, and he helps other people who are incarcerated, pushes them around in their wheelchairs to get them where they need to go, helps read information for blind inmates. He's gotten his high school diploma and is working on his college degree.
Wow.
And he's a person that prosecutors said should be killed.
Right.
He had nothing left to give this world. Not true. Not true. Everyone has something to give. No one should be shunted aside for any reason. Right. And we need to look at the whole person. There are a lot of bad things that are going on in the world. And hurt people is one of the sayings from the Capital community. There's a reason someone kills another person. There's a reason someone commits a sex assault. There's a reason someone steals from the King Soopers next door.
Indeed.
And if all you do is grab the person and throw them in a black hole and lock the door, it's just going to keep happening over and over. We are lesser people because we do this to our brothers and sisters.
Amen to that. Amen. And it's, I mean, you think about all the good that your client is doing after being removed from death row, and you think about he or any other person that he's next to right now, or some other folks we don't even know, could be there because of doctored DNA evidence too. It's a scary world we're living in.
It's heartbreaking. It is really heartbreaking, and that's one of the reasons it's so disturbing that we can't get sunshine on this issue.
Right.
We need to know. We can't fix the problem until we know.
Sunshine's the greatest disinfectant, right? But
That's
it's
what
not
they
going to
say.
go away unless you do shine the light.
Exactly.
Mary Claire, it's been an absolute joy to have you on the show.
Well,
Thank
I
you so
appreciate
much.
you so much. Thank you for letting me come rant.
Well, it's first of all not a rant. Second of all, absolutely necessary. And if there's anything that we can do for you ever, please let us know.
Will do. I would like you to take a couple of these 35Cs, actually.
Happy to help. Let's talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you
Great.
so much.
Yep. Thank you.